allow me to take the time to educate you. Boo! So we've had a full season of the School of Friendship, and to put it as nicely as I possibly can, it was a big disappointment. Now, in all fairness, I was pretty interested in seeing how the concept of a School of Friendship would play out. It seemed like a natural progression for the main six, and especially Twilight, to want to pass the knowledge they've gained onto the next generation. But with the way this idea was put into practice this past season, it was anything but natural. And it boils down to one main thing. Friendship isn't something that's fit for a traditional teaching environment. It's not suited to be a subject taught as its own class. I mean, think about it for a moment. If you had friends growing up, how did you make them? Were you forced to make friends with people around you in a class that was about friendship? Or did you make friends naturally over time and learn about the ins and outs of friendship through life experiences and learning from the experiences of your peers? I don't think it's a stretch to assume that most of you said the latter. And therein lies the problem with the School of Friendship as an idea. It takes a clinical approach to a concept that is anything but clinical. However, it's clear that the writers wanted to have the main six passing down their knowledge onto others somehow, and they also wanted to include other creatures in the process to mix up the character dynamics and cultures. So the question is, how do we achieve these goals while also teaching friendship lessons in a less rigid manner? The solution is easier than you think. When thinking up how this should play out, I made the show's objective of teaching lessons my main focus. No lore, no world building, none of that brony pandering bullshit. Considering that those things contributed to the show getting into the state that it's in to begin with, they're better left unused, so we're going back to basics here. As we all know, the show began with Princess Celestia sending Twilight to live in a small town to learn about friendship. And while Twilight did send reports to Celestia about the things she learned, she didn't learn them in a class. She learned them by simply living her life. So, here's what we do. We take the young six and age them up to be around the same age that Twilight was at the start of the show, so around 18 to 21 years old. They're old enough to live on their own, but young enough to still have plenty to learn. Then we have them live together in their own house in Ponyville, so instead of having a whole school of students, you just have the young six, and they'll send letters to their home countries, or in Sandbar's case, his hometown, about the things that they've learned as they learned them. No classrooms, no exams, just 6 young adults living as roommates. With them no longer being in the controlled environment of a classroom, we can see them interacting more with the town like Twilight did, and forming lasting connections with the people around them.
Isn't this just a rehash of seasons 1 and 2 though?
Not really, but I can see why you think that. While this idea clearly reappropriates the structure of the first 2 seasons, there's enough different about it to make it unique. First off, while there are some similarities between the main 6 and the young 6 when it comes to personalities, there's enough different about the young 6 to give them a dynamic that's distinct from that of the main 6. Secondly, instead of having one character living by herself with her assistant at her side, we have all 6 characters living together. This opens up plenty of opportunities for lessons about living with roommates, which we haven't had much of in the show. You could also take it a step further and have some of the young 6 get jobs. It makes sense in universe as it would be part of learning how to socialize, and it gives us even more opportunities for good lessons. I also thought of having each member of the young 6 be personally mentored by one of the main 6, and I was a bit conflicted on whether or not that was a good idea. On one hand, it makes the teacher-student relationships much more personal, but on the other, it would be to the young 6's benefit to stand out on their own without being tethered to the main 6. I figured the solution to this would be to not go for the obvious personality matchups. Instead of pairing Ocellus up with Twilight or Fluttershy, pair her up with AJ. Instead of having Dash mentor Gallus or Smolder, have her mentor Silverstream. This plays more to the show's strengths, as some of its best episodes have been the ones that focus on unconventional main 6 team-ups. Which leads us to the season finale. How would we cap off a season with these story changes in mind? What epic showdown should occur in order for the young 6 to show what they've learned? Well, don't make it an epic showdown. Okay, bronies, I know I lost a lot of you by saying that, but bear with me on this. Again, we're going back to basics here. So, this hypothetical finale would have the young 6 being invited to a little get-together by the main 6. When they find out that the leaders from their respective nations will be there too, they incorrectly interpret this as some sort of final exam and start treating it like one, pulling all-nighters and quizzing each other on the things they've learned over the course of the season. When the day of the get-together arrives, they're on edge and start overanalyzing and second-guessing everything, and it gets to the point where the main 6 have to intervene, pulling them aside and asking them what's wrong, and that's where we deliver the finale's lesson. At the start, I said that friendship was organic, not clinical, and that's what the young six learn in this moment, to not treat friendship like it's a rigid subject, thus reinforcing the theme that friendship is not a clinical study, but an organic aspect of life. Is it as flashy as the other finales? No, not by a long shot. But that's not the objective here. You can argue that not having a big finale makes the ending of the season feel not as special, whatever the hell that means this week, but driving home the themes is way more important than some arbitrary feeling of specialness. A more intimate finale that sums up all the things that we've learned and lets us appreciate these characters that we've gotten to know over the past year would be a much more fitting conclusion, and would also set up a solid foundation for the following season. Besides, considering that the last few epic showdowns we've had ended in snapshot redemptions or at least an attempt at one, I think they could use a break for at least one season. One of the growing problems I found with the show is that, at a certain point, it started to believe its own hype, and continued fueling that hype from that point onward. So this shift in focus back to what we started with will not only breathe some fresh air into the show, but also serve the objective of passing the torch onto the next generation, and reminding us all that friendship is, indeed, magic.
See? Wasn't that a nice, non-confrontational way to end this video?
I am never letting you write the conclusions to these scripts again. So what did you think of this video? Swarm that comment section below or bug me on social media. Until next time, keep it sketchy, folks.